Hi, this is Chishan Ma, and I'm going to present about the security and the privacy plan based on the scenario. So today's scenario is an urgent transfer of Beckham to UCLA. In time-critical transfers, teams usually face two competing risks: moving too slowly and compromising care continuity, or moving too quickly and losing control of PHI, leading to an unauthorized access or disclosure. So our one-line goal is, while transferring to UCLA, Beckham's PHI is exchanged and accessed by only the necessary people, with the necessary data for only the necessary time. The practical application of HIPAA's minimum necessary concept. So I will make three assumptions. First, this information exchange is for treatment, so additional HIPAA authorization is typically not required but minimum necessary. Auditability and access control still matter. Second, Mr. Beckham is a VIP, which increases the likelihood of insider curiosity access, media pressure, social engineering, and target attack. Third, because time is short, we need sorry, we need a fast lane such as breakless access, but it must be fully traceable. And also reviewable. So everything in next slide maps back to the goal that fast transfer but controlled auditable. So on this slide, I'm explaining the risk method. We use a simple operational framework. It's a threat times vulnerability times the impact. So for this case, we assess risk across the transfer workflow: packaging the data, transmitting it, receiving it at UCLA, internal access during the transfer, and post-event review. For each step, we ask what could go wrong, and what weakness can enable it, and what the harm if it happens. Because this is a VIP transfer, we pay special attention on the risks that become more probable under pressure, like insider misuse and process mistake. So, peer review work shows that inappropriate access to EHRs is a major concern and often involves insider rather than sophisticated external attacker. So on next slide, it will show a show risk register and the control we implement to reduce the top risk first. So this slide is a focus risk registers. 10 items that best match a VIP emergency transfer. The top risks cluster into three categories: insider misuse, social engineering, and transmission errors or leakage. First, insider misuse. A VIP snooping, screenshot, or unofficial sharing. This is why we need RBAC, or like a VIP specialty workflow, and strong auditing with real-time alerting. Research on detecting inappropriate EHR assets support the value of audit-based monitoring for identifying suspicious behavior. And second, the social engineering. And attackers may impersonate UCLA staff, an agent, or the media to obtain PHI. Under time pressure, the vulnerability is reliance on informal verification. Controls must include allow list, contact, and callback verification. The third, transmission risk. Using a wrong channel, sending the wrong recipient, or using personal cloud link for imaging. Leaves a common process failure for secure, auditable exchange, direct secure messaging, and structured health information exchange are frequently recommended approach. Finally, audit gaps are a risk by themselves. If we can reconstruct who assess that we can respond effectively. That's why centralized logs and altering are foundational. So this slide is about data minimization, like defining the transfer packets clearly and excluding everything else by default. Even when sharing PHR for treatment is permitted, minimum necessary principles still guide how much data we should disclose. The minimum necessary transfer packet include identity and safety basic like name, date of birth, MRN, allergies, active medications, and the relevant measure history. Next, current clinical status, the shift plan, vitals, key exam finding, critical labs, and an essential image and report. And third, intervention and the risks. What medication or procedures have been given, contraindication, and isolation or infection status. Finally, the head of logistics, the ETA receiving service or physician if known, and the primary contact point. So what we excluded by default is an unrelated longitudinal record, sensitivity, social history that doesn't affect immediate care, and financial or insurance detail unless the explicitly required and necessary. So this approach does two things. It speeds up the transfers and dramatically reduce the breach blast radius if something goes wrong. So now I will explain how we can exchange information securely using a tiered approach. Start with the most standard and auditable method and only downgrade if necessary. The tier 1 is EHR to EHR exchange through an HRE or FHIR based connection. This is ideal because it supports structured data, strong access controls, and complete auditability. Operationally, we still share only the minimum necessary transfer packet. Tier 2 is direct secure messaging, which is commonly used to send clinical summaries like CCDs securely and quickly. It is encrypted, standardized, and support auditing, making it practical for urgent workflows. The steps are confirm UCLS direct address via a trust directory or established list. Send the minimum necessary packet with required attachment, then perform callback confirmation to ensure the intended recipient receives it and can open it. The key point is we prioritize speed with governance, not speed by improvisation. If T1 and T2 aren't feasible, often because imaging files are large or connectivity can set up our limit, we use Tier 3, a skill portal or SFTP. The required controls of MFA, least privilege access, time-limited availability, and complete audit log. At the same time, we must clearly state prohibited channels like regular email, SMS, consumer message maps, apps, and a personal call link. These channels are not reliable managed and harder to audit and increase the chance of misdelivery. In a true life-threatening expectation where no standard channel is available, we can apply an emergency exchange process with compensation controls. So temporary encryption, two-channel identity verification, short-lived access, and post-event documentation are reviewed. Break glass concept emphasizes that emergency access must be accountable and auditable. So we can move fast, but we never abandon traceability. So now we're gonna define who can access that using RBAC and VIP breakage mechanism. The attending or on-call physician can access the necessary clinical packet and authorize the transfers. The case manager or transfer coordinator access only what required to logistic and coordination. Nursing and ED staff access information needed to current care. IT and security typically do not access the clinical content. They manage system, review logs, and respond to alert. Front desk or general admin should not access clinical data by default. For a VIP record, breaklist is critical. This is not open access. It is a restricted, approved roles require a documented reason, trigger real-time alerting, and is followed by post-access review to confirm a legitimate care relationship. So audit-driven approach are commonly used to detect and deter inappropriate EHR access. And breaklist control rely on accountability through login and review. So this design supports urgent care while actively discouraging curiosity access. And we're going to summarize the encryption and data protection in two areas: data in transit and data at rest. In transit, every transfer must use an encrypted channel such as HIE, FFIR exchange, direct secure messaging, or an MFA protected secure portal or SFTP. These approaches are commonly recommended for secure clinical exchange workflow. At rest, we require encryption for storage systems. Endpoint like laptops and tablet, and backups. We also limit removable media like USB drives and apply device management controls to reduce loss and theft risk. Key management should remain under organizational control with separation of duties. So system administrators are not automatically content viewers. Finally, to prevent exfiltration, we apply DLP controls and restrict downloads, printing, or screenshot where feasible. The goal is not to slow clinician down, but to reduce high-risk leakage paths while preserving the auditability and accountability. So, on the final slide, I address consent authorizations and the VIP media risk. Because this transit is for continuity of care, HIPAA generally permits disclosure of necessary PHI for treatment without a separate authorization form. However, minimum necessary thinking still applies in practice, and we rely on defined data packet, access controls, and auditing. When might additional authorization be needed? As when disclosure are not for treatment, or when sharing goes beyond when it is necessary. For example, disclosure to non-clinical third party could be one of the conditions. And for VIP media strategy, the operational rule is simple. We do not confirm or deny patient information, and all inquiries go through PR or legal. Social engineering risk is elevated for VIP cases, and research emphasizes that monitoring and controlling access is current to reducing inappropriate disclosure. So the takeaway is the treatment allows timely handoff, but governance, meaning the unnecessary secure exchange and auditing, protect the patient and the organization. Here's a reference. Thank you for listening.